Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The city of Chicago was sweltering under a relentless summer sun. The streets teemed with protesters, police officers, journalists, and passers-by frightened by the palpable tension in the air. Shouts, whistles, and drum beats created a deafening din. Amid the commotion, a young police officer, Marcus Taylor, advanced with determination. His perfectly tailored uniform, his badge gleaming in the sun, and his boots clanging on the hot concrete, everything about his posture exuded seriousness and authority. Marcus was ambitious, quick to follow orders, but impulsive. He firmly believed that maintaining order sometimes required strict measures, even controversial ones. Today, he was tasked with dispersing a demonstration that was beginning to escalate. His gaze, serious and focused, followed every movement of the crowd, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of chaos. He didn't yet know that the hierarchy among police officers was more complex than he imagined. William Taylor, his father, wasn't just a police officer, he was the Chicago police chief, a man respected for his integrity, discipline, and sense of justice. A man capable of inspiring both fear and admiration. Marcus, however, was completely unaware of this identity. Since childhood, he had grown up with a distant relationship with his father, never understanding why he seemed so cold and strict. As Marcus advanced through the crowd, tear gas in hand, adrenaline pumped through his veins. He thought of only one thing: maintaining order. Every minute counted, every move could be decisive. But he didn't yet realize that this simple action, a jet of gas launched into the crowd, would unleash a storm that would shatter his career, his reputation, and his family ties. In the distance, journalists filmed, citizens fled, children cried. Marcus Taylor was about to cross a line he could never erase. And what he didn't know most was that the chief of the police force he served was his own father. That day, under the relentless Chicago sun, youth, pride, and impulsiveness would collide with authority, truth, and morality. And Marcus Taylor would learn, in a brutal and irreversible way, that some truths cannot remain hidden. The sun was beating down on Chicago that morning, but that didn't stop the tension from being felt in the streets. Marcus Taylor, a 28-year-old police officer, adjusted his helmet and took a deep breath. The demonstration had started early, and already the first signs were being held up, slogans chanted vehemently. "Marcus, everything is ready." "Are you sure of your strategy?" asked Lieutenant Jenkins, his direct superior. Marcus nodded. "Yes, Jenkins. We'll keep things under control, but we'll act quickly if things escalate." His voice was firm, but beneath his bravado, an invisible nervousness coursed through him. He knew this kind of situation could turn bad in seconds. As he moved through the crowd, he spotted groups of protesters blocking the main street. Youths were shouting, some were throwing empty bottles, and the police seemed increasingly overwhelmed. Marcus felt the adrenaline rising in his veins. "Marcus!" Jenkins yelled into his walkie-talkie. "Look out, the group on the right is starting to push." Marcus raised his tear gas canister. He knew its effectiveness, but also its danger. The gas could disperse the crowd, or cause uncontrollable panic. Yet he didn't hesitate. He aimed the canister and pulled the trigger. Thick smoke billowed out, enveloping the protesters. Screams rang out, people gasped for air, all trying to escape the irritating substance. Marcus felt a mixture of power and guilt course through him. He had done his job, but at what cost? Amid the chaos, he didn't immediately notice a woman falling to the ground, choking and frightened. She tried to get up, but slipped again. Her eyes met Marcus's, and for a moment, the world seemed to stop. A split second when he realized he had just crossed an invisible line. As the smoke cleared slightly, a voice rang out in his earpiece. "Chief Taylor on station, emergency." The name echoed in his head. His father. Marcus felt his stomach clench. He had just discovered that he had acted without knowing that the police chief was his own father. The murmurs of the crowd, the sirens in the distance, Jenkins's disapproving look, it all blended into a feeling of shame, urgency, and fear. Marcus realized then that his mission had just become much more complicated than he had imagined. And that his impulsive decisions were going to catch up with him sooner than he ever thought. Dense tear gas smoke enveloped the street like an oppressive veil. Protesters coughed, cried, and some collapsed, their eyes burning red. Marcus advanced cautiously, but his mind was still clouded by the news: his father was the chief of police. A truth that almost paralyzed him at the time. "Back off," he shouted to the protesters, his voice drowned out by the surrounding din. But his orders seemed to be lost in the chaos. Young people slid along the ground, trying to escape the smoke. A woman, her hair plastered to her face with sweat and tears, stumbled right in front of him. Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. She was barely 30, her face twisted with pain and panic. He felt a rush of adrenaline, but also a wave of guilt. "Oh no," he muttered to himself, unable to move any faster. A few meters away, his colleague Jenkins shouted, "Marcus, back off. You're crossing the line." But Marcus, caught up in the momentum of the mission and his own inner conflict, had already launched a second round of gas. The panic grew. People were screaming, running in all directions, pushing and shoving each other. The woman he had seen fall found herself trapped in the crowd, and Marcus felt his heart sink. As he tried to approach to help, a reporter pointed a camera at him. Marcus's dark gaze met the man's, and he realized that every move was now being recorded. His actions, his decisions, everything would be scrutinized, judged. Amid the echo of sirens and screams, a voice in his earpiece broke his brief moment of paralysis. "Marcus, it's William. Stop everything now. I want an immediate report." Marcus's blood ran cold. His father, the police chief. He'd never imagined the respected, imposing man would be keeping such a close eye on this situation. And now he saw him, at the heart of the chaos, causing exactly what his father would never have tolerated. The woman he'd gassed was still on the ground. Marcus felt a dull anger rise at himself. How could he have been so reckless? Every second seemed to last an eternity, and the chaos around him only intensified the shame and fear. Marcus finally pulled away, his chest burning, his hands shaking. The gas had dissipated slightly, but the mess remained. In the silence that followed, between the sobs and the panting breaths, Marcus knew one thing with icy certainty: this mistake would haunt him, and there would be no way to erase it. Marcus returned to the police station, his heart pounding. Every footstep echoed through the empty hallways, an echo of guilt and fear. He knew the situation was going to be serious, but he wasn't prepared for what lay ahead. As soon as he entered the main office, he saw William Taylor, his father, sitting behind the large mahogany desk. His face grave, his hands clasped, he stared at him with icy intensity. Marcus immediately felt the weight of his authority and his disappointment. "Marcus," William began, his voice low but firm, resonating like a hammer. "What did you do there?" Marcus looked down. I was following orders. I thought." He hesitated, unable to find the words to justify his actions. "I simply wanted to control the situation." William shook his head, his expression impassive but his eyes betraying a mixture of anger and sadness. "You didn't even know who I was in that place? You were supposed to protect, not..." He trailed off, letting his words hang in the air like an implacable judgment. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat. He had never felt such a mixture of shame and fear. The fact that his own father, the police chief, had witnessed his actions terrified him. He realized that his impulsiveness had just put him in a situation where his career and honor were at stake. I'm sorry, Dad. I had no idea," Marcus whispered. William took a deep breath, trying to contain his anger. "Marcus, you're my son, and I want to believe in you. But the police force isn't a stage where you can improvise. Every action has consequences, and today, your actions could destroy much more than your reputation." Marcus felt the weight of his father's words crush his ego. He knew he'd acted on impulse, but he'd never considered the full implications of his actions. His guilt intensified when he thought of the protesters, the woman he'd tear-gassed, and the cameras that had captured the entire scene. William stood up slowly, pacing around his office. There will be an internal investigation. You will have to face your actions. And I will have to handle this situation both as chief of police and as a father. Marcus nodded, his throat tight. He realized then that this day would mark a turning point in his life, and that the truth about his father and himself would catch up with him. The silence that followed was heavy, almost deafening. Marcus knew he could never undo this mistake, but now he had to find the courage to face it and repair as much of the damage caused by his haste as possible. The next morning, the precinct was eerily quiet. Marcus knew this would be a decisive day. His heart pounded as he climbed the stairs to the chief's office. Every step seemed to echo throughout the building, guilt and fear. When he finally stepped through the door, William Taylor was standing in front of the large bay window overlooking the city. He seemed calm, almost impassive, but his gaze was piercing, heavy with judgment. "Marcus, sit down," he said in a deep voice. Marcus obeyed, sitting down in the chair in front of the desk. He could feel the weight of both fatherly and professional authority. William slowly turned to face him. "Yesterday," William began, gesturing toward the scene of the protest, "you crossed a line no decent police officer should cross. And the worst part," he stopped, letting the room hang in silence. "The worst part, Marcus, is that you did it without knowing I was supervising the situation." Marcus looked down, unable to meet his father's gaze. I didn't know, Dad. I thought I was doing the right thing, to maintain order." William shook his head, exasperated but controlled. "Law enforcement isn't achieved through fear and violence. It's achieved through discernment, discipline, and respect for citizens. You must understand that your actions have consequences that go far beyond yourself." Marcus felt shame wash over him. He had always wanted to prove his worth, and now he understood that his impulsiveness had betrayed him. "I understand. I'm sorry. I will do everything to make up for my mistakes." William finally sat down behind his desk, his hands clasped in front of him. "Marcus, I can't turn a blind eye to what happened. There will be an internal investigation. You will have to answer for your actions to the entire precinct." The young policeman nodded, his face pale. "I understand, Dad. I'm ready to accept the punishment." A heavy silence fell, broken only by the distant sound of sirens and horns on the street. William took a deep breath. "Marcus, I want you to succeed. But for that to happen, you must learn to control your impulses and think before you act. If you don't change, this career you so desire could end here." Marcus felt a crucial lesson sink in. This wasn't just a professional confrontation, but a true family encounter. For the first time, he understood that respect and discipline weren't just words, but values he had to embody, especially when wearing a uniform. As he left the office, the weight on his shoulders seemed almost tangible. He knew it would be a long road to regaining the trust of his father, his colleagues, and the community. But Marcus Taylor was determined, he would not let this mistake define his life. The next day, Marcus was summoned before the police department's internal investigation committee. The usually familiar corridors of the station seemed hostile and icy. The eyes of his colleagues focused on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Some were silent but judgmental, others murmured among themselves, exchanging hypotheses about the situation. Sergeant Ramirez, a stern and respected man, spoke as soon as Marcus entered the makeshift courtroom. "Marcus Taylor, you are here to explain your actions during yesterday's protest. You were supposed to maintain order without causing harm. However, you used tear gas excessively, endangering citizens." Marcus felt his stomach clench. He nodded slowly. "I understand, Sergeant. I acted too quickly. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I recognize my mistakes." Another committee member, Inspector Cole, spoke. "You are also Chief Taylor's son. Were you aware of his presence on the ground?" Marcus lowered his head. No, I didn't know that. Silence fell over the room. Every word carried weight, every look seemed to weigh on him like a silent condemnation. The images of the demonstration, broadcast on the committee screens, clearly showed Marcus's actions, bursts of tear gas sowing panic, the crowd in disarray, and the woman fallen to the ground, suffocating. Marcus, Sergeant Ramirez continued, you must understand that every action in this profession has consequences. And this mistake affects not only your career, but the reputation of the entire department. Marcus felt tears well up in his eyes. The pressure was overwhelming. He knew he had to stay strong, but the shame and guilt were almost unbearable. After several hours of hearings, the committee deliberated. Marcus was provisionally suspended while the full investigation was completed. He could have felt relieved, but instead, a feeling of emptiness and fear gripped him. How would he regain the trust of his father, his colleagues, and the public? Outside, journalists were already waiting, cameras and microphones trained on him. Every word, every gesture would be analyzed and criticized. Marcus understood that he had just become the unwitting symbol of police excesses and tensions in the city. As he walked away from the police station, his face burning, Marcus felt an icy certainty settle over him. He had to change, learn from his mistakes, and above all, find a way to repair what he had destroyed. Marcus had barely left the police station when the first images of the protest began circulating on social media. Videos showing the tear gas, the panicked protesters, and the woman who had fallen to the ground spread like wildfire. The comments were virulent, some condemned the excessive violence, others demanded immediate sanctions. Marcus returned home, his face ashen. His phone buzzed incessantly, calls, notifications, private messages. Reporters sought interviews, social media poured out its judgment, and the city seemed to be looking at him with silent but implacable accusation. Marcus, you have to answer, said his sister, Naomi, seeing him hesitate in front of his screen. You can't just stand there and take all this in. He shook his head. I don't even know where to begin. Everyone sees me as a monster, and I'm just a police officer who made a mistake. The next day, the police station was inundated with calls from reporters and city officials. The pressure was mounting to an almost unbearable level. William Taylor, his father, called constantly to ensure Marcus was following instructions and cooperating with the investigation. Marcus, William said into the phone, his voice firm but protective, you must remain calm and transparent. Don't try to justify yourself to the press. Let the official statements do the talking. But even as he followed the instructions, Marcus felt the city's hatred and disappointment like a crushing weight on his shoulders. Every comment, every article, every news report seemed to point the finger at him, and he understood that his career could be destroyed in a matter of hours if the situation continued as it was. In the following days, Marcus was invited to participate in crisis meetings with community representatives and civic leaders. He listened humbly to the criticisms and accusations. Every word made him understand the magnitude of his mistake and the importance of repairing not only his image, but also the bond of trust between the police and the public. If I don't change, Marcus thought, I'll never be worthy of this uniform, or of my father. For the first time, he understood that the media pressure was not simply a reflection of his mistake, but a mirror of society, its expectations, and the immense responsibility that weighed upon him. And he knew that if he wanted to regain trust, he had to act with wisdom, patience, and humility. Marcus Taylor rose early that morning, determined to change the course of his career and his reputation. The temporary suspension he received was not just a punishment, but an opportunity to reflect on his mistakes and act with greater discernment. He knew he had to regain the trust not only of his father, but also of his colleagues and the community. His first step was to join a local police citizen mediation program. There, he met with residents affected by the recent incidents. Many were afraid, some angry, and others simply expressed distrust. Marcus listened attentively, without interrupting, taking note of every complaint and suggestion. I understand your anger, he finally said to a mother whose child had witnessed the demonstration. I know I made a mistake and I want to learn from this experience. I want to work with you, not against you. The sincerity in his voice seemed to touch some people. Although not everyone immediately forgave him, several participants began to engage in dialogue, sharing their concerns and expressing their hopes for a more accountable police force. At the same time, Marcus took concrete action. He organized awareness-raising workshops for young people, educational sessions on the role of the police and how protests should be handled peacefully. Every day, he saw skeptical faces slowly transform into curious looks and, sometimes, understanding smiles. But it wasn't just the community he sought redemption from. Marcus also had to rebuild trust with his colleagues. He spent time listening to their advice, learning from more experienced agents, and showing that he was willing to put his pride aside to work as a team. One evening, as he was leaving one of the workshops, he received a call from his father. "Marcus," William said, his voice softer than usual, "I heard about your efforts today. Keep it up. It's a good start, but it's only the beginning of the road." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and determination. He knew the road would be long, but for the first time since the incident, he felt he could truly right his wrongs. Redemption wasn't instantaneous, but every action, every sincere gesture, brought him closer to a better version of himself. And as he walked beneath the city lights, Marcus realized that true strength lay not in tear gas or authority, but in listening, humility, and responsibility. He was ready to fight for this new path, no matter the cost. A few weeks after the incident, Marcus was summoned by his father for close supervision on the field. William Taylor wanted to ensure that his son fully understood the responsibility that came with wearing the uniform and that his mistakes would never be repeated. "Marcus," William said, looking him straight in the eye, "today you will be working under my supervision. You will have to listen carefully, analyze each situation before acting, and never let your impulsiveness decide for you." Marcus nodded. His heart was beating fast, but this time it wasn't fear alone, it was a mixture of respect and a willingness to learn. On the ground, they encountered a peaceful demonstration, organized to denounce local issues. The officers were tense, but the crowd remained calm. William watched his son closely, ready to intervene if necessary. "Look, Marcus," William whispered, "every move, every decision, has an impact. You can't rush. Analyze, communicate, and protect." Marcus took a deep breath and followed her instructions. He observed the crowd, identified the groups that were beginning to become agitated, and calmly approached to speak with them. His words were measured, his tone reassuring. He explained the rules and the reason for the police presence, listened to their concerns, and remained patient. For the first time, Marcus felt the true power of communication and respectful authority. The tension in the crowd eased, and several protesters nodded, acknowledging the effort at dialogue. At the end of the day, William approached him. "You did well today," he said. "What you've learned here, Marcus, is that brute force solves nothing. Discipline, patience, and respect, that's what makes a real police officer." Marcus felt a mixture of pride and gratitude. He understood that this wasn't just a lesson in police work, but a lesson in life. His father was showing him that true authority came from self-control and respect for others. As they walked back to the police station, Marcus knew that day marked a turning point. He had learned to listen, to think before acting, and to control himself, even in the most tense situations. His father's lesson would not be forgotten. It would remain etched in his memory, guiding every step he took on the road to redemption. A few weeks after following his father's teachings, Marcus decided it was time to make amends directly with the victims of the incident. Among them, the woman he had accidentally tear-gassed during the protest occupied his every thought. After some searching, he managed to find her, Emily Carter, a calm and determined 32-year-old teacher. She was still shaken by the event, but her anger had been tempered by time and the media coverage that had highlighted Marcus's mistake. Marcus took a deep breath before knocking on her door. Emily opened it, surprised to see him. "Mr. Taylor," she said, her voice hesitant. "Emily." Marcus paused for a moment, searching for words. "I am deeply sorry for what happened. I had no idea what it would cause. I want to apologize personally, and I want to do everything I can to right this wrong." Emily looked at him for a long time, scrutinizing his sincerity. Her eyes, still red from the incident, softened slightly. "You were young, impulsive, and honest in your apologies," she replied. "But you must understand that what you did had real consequences for all of us." Marcus nodded gravely. "I know. I now understand the immense responsibility we police officers have. And I want to learn from this mistake so that no one else suffers because of my actions." After a long silence, Emily sighed and gave a small smile. "Very well. I forgive you, Marcus. But you must prove that this forgiveness is not just words." This forgiveness, though limited, struck Marcus like a light in the darkness. For the first time, he felt that his efforts at redemption had concrete meaning. He promised to continue working with the community, to dialogue and protect, with respect and discipline. As Marcus left Emily's house, he felt a new strength within him. This forgiveness didn't completely erase the past, but it marked a turning point, the beginning of a rebuilt relationship between him and those he had hurt. As he walked the streets of Chicago, he understood a crucial truth: righting one's wrongs required courage, humility, and a constant desire to do the right thing. And this lesson would carry with him for the rest of his life, both in his work and in his personal relationships. Several months had passed since the incident at the protest. Marcus Taylor was no longer the impulsive young police officer he had once been. Every lesson learned, every mistake acknowledged, and every forgiveness granted had shaped him into a more thoughtful, humble, and determined man. The day he officially returned to the station, the building seemed less intimidating. The looks on his faces were different now, a mixture of respect and cautious confidence. Marcus felt that every move he made would be scrutinized, but he was ready for the challenge. Her father, William Taylor, was waiting for her at the entrance. Without a word, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The simple gesture spoke volumes, silent but solid support. "Today," William said in a deep but gentle voice, "you have the opportunity to show that you understand. That you are ready to be an exemplary police officer." Marcus nodded, his heart light but resolute. "I won't disappoint you, Dad." In the following weeks, Marcus worked alongside his father on new community engagement initiatives. He participated in awareness workshops, educational programs for youth and adults, and patrols focused on prevention rather than repression. Every day, he applied the principles he had learned: patience, listening, and respect. One evening, while making the rounds in a rough neighborhood, Marcus and William observed a group of young people chatting with curiosity and respect. One of them recognized Marcus and waved to him. Marcus smiled at them, feeling that his efforts were finally paying off. "You see," William whispered, "true authority doesn't come from guns or fear. It comes from the trust people have in you." Marcus smiled back. "I understand now, Dad. And I will do everything to earn that trust every day." The road to redemption had been long and difficult, but it had been necessary. Marcus had learned that every mistake could be turned into a lesson, every forgiveness into an opportunity to rebuild, and that a father's love and discipline could guide even the most faltering steps toward the light. As he walked home that evening, the lights of Chicago twinkling around him, Marcus Taylor felt ready for a new beginning. No longer as the impulsive, scared young police officer he had once been, but as a responsible, thoughtful man worthy of the uniform he proudly wore. And for the first time in a long time, he felt peace.